Hi there, guys. Welcome back to another episode of Inspire You. Joining me today is my good friend Zemen H from TikTok. He's a fellow content creator and a really good friend. Zemen, how are you doing today?
Hi, Lash. I'm doing good.
Good. We've had a brief chat before starting the episode today, and we've already been cracking jokes with each other. So I'm super excited to have you on. So for those who don't know Zemen, we've been friends, I think, roughly since January on TikTok. Is that right?
Just about.
So 10, 11 months. And the one thing that I absolutely love about Zemen, and I know that all of our friends, say the same thing about you, you've got a really, really high energy. And this is one of the reasons I've really been looking forward to doing this particular episode, because you guys are going to see exactly why Zemen is just one of those people who everywhere he goes, he just radiates positivity and good vibes. So I'm very excited to have you on here, first of all.
Thank you.
If you guys aren't following Zemen, then please go and check out his content. Your handle on TikTok, I believe, is unapologetic Zemen. Is that correct?
Yes, at the unapologetic Zemen.
At the unapologetic Zemen. I will tag obviously in the in the bio for people to go and check out your content. We'll talk a little bit about your content, throughout the episode, because you are known for a variety of different different things on TikTok.
Yes.
One of which I know we'll touch upon specifically is the suspender dance, but we'll go into that.
Yes.
But I want to start by talking to you about your journey through the app. As I do with all my guests, I'm very interested to find out what brought you to TikTok, what inspired you to make content, and just a little bit about because you've been quite open about this, a little bit about your mental health journey.
Absolutely. So I'll start with how I got started on. I have to try to say this with a straight face because it is all material to the story. So a lot of people when they started on TikTok, a lot of people's story is directly because of quarantine, in the world, everything basically the world was going through last year in 2020.
Yeah,
mine is slightly related to that. Because a lot of that stuff started around the spring of last year. I started on TikTok a little bit shorter than that. It was mainly because in my current field of work, I was on a contract office job that lasted from 2019 up until February 2020. Literally the day I finished my office job, I wasn't returning back because they couldn't extend my contract just because of the availability process. But we had like nice things that stuff. So I clear up my desk and I was like, that night, I was like, I need to do something that's going to help keep distracted, because I'm not necessarily religious, but if you've heard the phrase, idle hands are the devil's plaything. So I was like, I need to find something to reinvest myself in, because this is because I'm about to show up with a whole lot of spare time. And I'm literally moving my hands as I'm saying this. And so literally I'm just sitting there and I had scrolled past it. I had already heard about it on YouTube a couple times. And what really made me cringe a little bit for a second was the only other time I knew about it was my little nieces, who were probably like in high school at the time, were literally doing TikTok dances. And in my head, I was just like, what are they doing? That's the outsider mentality that I had looking at this beforehand. I was like, why do they keep like moving around in front of the phone? Like, what did they do? Fast forward a few months, because Chris was part of that.
Yeah, we're all doing.
Literally, I think it was like a perfect start. So, and I only say this because I think there was a piece of me that was going to find this app, or at least make it, or at least find myself in here prior to the world changing or world temporarily shifting. But I definitely think a lot of those elements helped motivate why I had to continue to reinvest and spend time there, because it was probably going to be that was the origin. But what I think required me to stay a lot, especially during a lot of last year, was because I needed to have a form of escapism out from what's going on. We were all essentially shut down for a second. And interesting enough, I'm not.
Yeah.
Yes. And interestingly enough, I'm not naturally extroverted. And I already say this, like he's making a face. He's making his face is fixed like this. He's literally like, I don't know what this man is talking about. Um, to which I have to explain, like, and I always take a moniker positive. But for me, this was a perfect form to do because I'm naturally introverted, or at least, or somewhere between the two. And this allowed me to sit through a medium that allowed me to kind of be more uninhibited because I don't have that extra anxiety or stress that might come from being around a large group of strangers in person.
Yeah.
And so so it allows me, to really just be the aspects of myself that I want to be at the very least, and what I feel and what I'm holding inside. So there is a very honest, potentially vulnerable side of myself that I put in uh, through my content creation and through the app and that kind of stuff. So that's why it can be bubbly. But 100% it comes from the fact of like I sit through a little realm where I feel a little protected and a little free to do so.
That's interesting because I didn't know that about you. You always come across as very sort of outgoing and extroverted and quite, especially in your content.
Yes.
And just touching on that a little bit, because I know you actually went to the Vegas convention, the big sort of TikTok meetup
Yes.
earlier this year, and there was obviously a lot of content being created and stuff on social media that people were posting. I know you met quite a lot of, different
lot of people,
friends of ours and stuff. And so
yeah.
how did you find that, dealing with anxiety and, that side of things? Was that quite an overwhelming experience?
So the way I've kind of explained it to people, because I've had other moments like that too. And I think at this point, I'm best described as like an extroverted introvert instead of just adhering to this binary of like one or the other.
Yeah.
The way I've explained this, because there's been one other time in my life I've been able to do this, and it was when I was in graduate school.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if this nullifies again. I don't know if this nullifies being introverted, being extroverted. See, yeah. But my biggest thing was, if you put me in a room full of strangers, I'm going to respond differently than maybe how I'm going to respond in a place where I'm familiar. And so a lot of times the way I've explained it is, how like, okay, you see like a bird and they're like trying to build a nest, like maybe before the babies, they're just trying. When a bird builds a nest, it grabs scrap branches. It grabs this over here. It grabs move over here. It grabs, it grabs a brush. It grabs a wild brush. It grabs twigs and trees and leaves and that kind of stuff. And it's just stuffing things together and that kind of stuff. And I'm like, I have a habit where like I have to build a nest. So for example, when you say like when we go to the Las Vegas meetup, I knew at least 50% of the people that were there. So I wasn't walking into a room full of people that I had no social context with, or I hadn't met most of them, really any of them really. But I wasn't walking into a place where I have absolutely no social context with anybody there. I have a very different, I would have a very different personality. So it's kind of like I have to systematically slightly make connections or that kind of thing. So I have familiar ideas and people that I can see. So if I'm walking in a room that's like, okay, well they're over there and those people there and like people I'm very good close with over there and that, so I can move around. But if it was flipped the opposite, I would be kind of like sitting in the corner, just kind of like
not knowing what to do with yourself.
Yeah.
And to be fair, I think most people are like that anyway.
I don't know if it's like, I'm pretty sure that's not manipulative. I don't know what the exact term is.
No, it's not. I think like you say, it's easier to meet up with people and to have that kind of, that natural connection when you've got to know them a little bit. And this is the thing. A lot of people talk about these sort of these meetups happening through through TikTok and stuff. And my mother's one of them. She's just like, you're talking to these people through an app and then you're meeting up with them, but you don't know who they are. And I have friends that say the same thing to me. And I'm like, look, I'm not just meeting them. These are people that I've been speaking to for weeks or months, people who we've ingrained ourselves into each other's lives. And we talk on a regular basis and we don't just talk on the app, we talk off the app and support each other through there as well. So a lot of the time when I do meetups, it's very much a case of it's somebody I've got to know or somebody that I've had contact with before, because that makes it easier for me. and it makes it easier to break the ice when you do meet them in person, because there's that level of excitement of like, oh, I've been talking to you for so long and I want to see what you're like in real life. And I want to do content with you, and you know.
And in my head, it was like this is socialization in reverse. And so I felt like my brain felt like it was breaking. I was like, if I don't either FaceTime you or like been able to speak with you in person, but we've been interacting virtually, if it's in the order we're acting virtually first and then we don't actually meet, there's a part where just sort of like this is like I'm gonna feel like I need to, you need to see this. It doesn't feel complete until we have. Now that being said, the first time I had met up with other people through the app, it was much more smaller. We spent literally months. It was a group of friends that I had started. I'm not necessarily familiar with them now, but at the time there was first group of people that I started affiliating with on the app, and we went and we planned this trip. We originally planned the trip like January last year, so we've been within like 2 months of meeting each other. We finally planned one during Labor Day, and somebody was coming to pick me up at my house. Okay. And I was terrified, even though I've been talking with them for like 6 months. And even though I'm pretty sure they knew my surname at this point, and like we had talked and chat, like there was still this part of just sort of like, oh God, like I don't know how to do this. Like I don't, and that kind of stuff. And you know, it was great. But when we did finally see each other, it was great. I think that was literally the first time I'd met other people through the app. And although I'm not affiliated with them now, it went pleasant, and it was necessary for me.
How do you find that the app has helped you in terms of your own mental health, in terms of being able to sort of break out of your comfort zone and sort of, learn more about yourself and to sort of be more yourself and be more accepting of yourself?
I don't know what the name of it is. I think people maybe like therapy talk. So for anyone who's not aware, like, so a lot of times when you go through TikTok or go through the For You page, there will be certain sectors of content that will come up, and naturally a lot of people traditionally wade through a lot of areas, and one of them, I think, kind of like therapy talk, or people have like it's like motivational is wonderful, but this is like kind of like, it's like the videos where someone is addressing like someone's just like, you're not a sociable person. You've been taught to people please your whole life because you had high expectations for me. And like the ones that like slightly call you out.
They're painful, aren't they? They're the ones. They're the ones that I'm like. They're the ones that I'm like instant follow. I'm like, I don't even comment. I like the video because I like the video, and I'll just follow the person. And in my head, I'm like, I really want to leave a comment, but what you're like personal attack.
Yeah, and it's like, you were not responsible for other people's approval, and then it'll just be like the one person I love. He has very, very long hair. He's a beautiful face, very, very long hair, and this gentleman, I'm not sure his pronouns, but individual, and he's playing both the insecure mind and like the assertive mind at the same time.
Okay.
So in fact, two of our friends literally just did a duet about it yesterday, and I'll be like, repeat after me. It's like, okay, and I was like, you are not responsible for other people's trauma. It's like, I'm a piece of garbage, and I'm the one who's caused. He's like, no.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, it's videos like that I see that sort of, because they give you a giggle, but they're also very relatable, because you start to think more about obviously the concept behind the video, and you're like, oh, actually no, I do that. I'm guilty of that.
100%.
Maybe that's something I should work on. And then you sit there and you go to bed at night and you're scrolling through TikTok and you're just like, oh my God, I have so many issues.
and then it'll be the ones where like I don't think we can play it right now, but like this one song I'm absolutely obsessed with, but it's addressing narcissism. I'll send it to you later. I'm pretty sure you've heard this because it was popular last year, and then the audio was popular last year and it's coming back now. Okay. But my head and I was like, this slaps. Oh my God, this slaps so much, but it's not relatable to me. So that's the thing. It's like so painful. Just sort of like, damn, can someone just be a narcissist to me so I can just use it? Because I'll be sitting there. It's like, I was like, I love this. This is so affirming, but it's not my story. It's like, God damn. I was like, can you be a narcissist to me for a second, just so I can use to call you out?
Just so I can call you out. Just 5 minutes, please. Take this 5 minutes. Yeah. And I find that when you generally make content that is more relatable to your own life, I find that makes it, that kind of, in a way, is a, and I've spoke about this with a couple of people on the podcast already. It's a form of catharsis for me, at least. I'm very, I don't know if you know this, but if we've had this conversation, I'm very method when it comes to my TikTok creations. So the content I put out is always relative to stuff that I'm either going through or have been through. And I find that just pulling it out there is almost like writing in a journal. And I was having literally this conversation, actually, I think on the last episode with Kat, where we were literally talking about the idea of going through your content, at least for me anyway. And she said that she's done the same, going through your content.
It's like your diary at that point.
Like a diary of what you've been through. And I'm like, oh my Lord, it's so true. It's so true.
Oh, 100%. Because my situation was, and I'm not saying this, what I'm about to say is not an effort of saying for deprecation. I'm saying that it is material to what I'm trying to point out, which I happen to have a relatively small account, and so my videos only shed a small bit. The reason why I point this out is because, and this is not me trying to polish a turd, is see, I'm just throwing euphemism at him, just seeing if he catches them.
That's
don't
fine.
Catch that one. That's
you throw all the euphemisms at. It's all fine.
But don't catch that one. That's literally a turd. Don't touch that. What's wrong with you? But
and we've now made the episode explicit. It's great. I love it.
Yes. Oh, you can't. Oh,
no, we're fine. We're fine. Don't worry.
Okay. I thought that word was safe. Okay. But I got to a point, especially when I first started, where I was like, I'm gonna just throw everything out into the void. And because this is only going to like 30 people and they cats, like I can do like the primary purpose. A couple of them, I'm convinced a couple of them are just cat accounts. Like it's just, like somebody's cat somehow just started a account and has 30,000 followers. Anyway, because I know it's just going to like a couple people, and they cats. I've just got
this image of a cat just scrolling.
And yet, just
is
that not a cat's face? Just.
I can't with you.
Just sit there judging. Just in the FYP, just judging. Just.
Okay. So you say you're throwing all this content out just into the void and just seeing basically what sticks, which I think is what 90% of us do when we
kind of. Part of it is to see what sticks, but the primary thing is it just becomes my diary, because then it's like, this is what I'm feeling in the moment.
Yeah.
I get to say I don't give a fuck how someone feels about it. Because it's where I'm looking for me. And because I'm convinced nobody will see it, I get to just have the uninhibited part of myself. And then I get to send it to people that I want to see it. To connect with me.
Yeah.
There's a sound once that I think I probably said this to you at some point, where it's just sort of like, people talk about like the 5 lines languages. My 6th one is like just sending these videos to my friends. Like literally, it's like if you've had like and now like you sent me your phone number, you're gonna regret that, because now like I'm just gonna be texting you. It's like my love language is just sending you like videos. Like, I am hilarious.
I've never heard that described as a love language. The 6th love language is sending people TikToks.
It's like TikTok. If I send you TikToks, like that's.
If I send you TikToks, I love you.
If I send you TikToks, yes.
It's absolutely true. But yeah, I think being a content creator in general and just being on the app, whether you're, whether you've got a small following, whether you've amassed a following of hundreds of thousands of people, I think really at the end of the day it's irrelevant, because we're all on there, we're all trying to showcase to people our own individual journey anyway, and we're just trying to show people that we're relatable human beings who go through the ups and downs of life just as anybody else does,
in a way that makes us thrive, which is why everyone kind of does it a slightly different way.
Yeah, we've just got a vanity complex and the fact that we want people to like us.
Just a bit.
Just a little bit.
Just a bit.
But I think as long as the content that you're making is helping people and it's sort of driving people to try new things, I mean, let's be honest. All of us, when we start out, get inspired by somebody or a group of individuals. Like, I know that there were a select number of individuals when I first started on TikTok that I sort of, I started following their content and I was like, wow, I never thought of doing this kind of stuff. and it pushed me to try new things and to, you know, to grow and to develop, you know, into my own kind of content. And I think that that is part of the beauty of it. You never know who you're inspiring, and you never really know who you're helping. I mean, I've had messages now of people in the last couple of months alone saying, you know, I want to do what you do, but I'm too scared to try it. And I'm like, well, let me point something out. Less than 12 months ago, I was in your exact position. I joined TikTok on a whim, and I thought about making a couple of funny videos, and then it just snowballed. You know, I fell into a community of amazing people who, you know, support each other and uplift each other. And, you know, we are, I don't want it to sound corny or anything like that, but
you're gonna say family.
Yeah, we're not just a group of individuals who have kind of randomly met and we're going and we're liking each other's bit. No, we're supporting each other, and we're you know, showing each other love and respect, you know, on and off the app. And I know obviously I'm on a different side of the pond to a lot of, you know, people that I'm connected with at the moment, but I do obviously have people I've connected with here in the UK as well. But you know, when the time comes for me to meet some of you guys, you know, be it at a convention or be it, you know, through individual trips and whatever, I know that that's going to be a monumentous moment, because there's going to be all this kind of, you know, history in terms of, you know, oh, do you remember when we did these videos, or do you remember when we helped through this, you know, particular area of our life? And I think that's so beautiful. Like,
okay, 100%. Real quick, Lesh, I'm talking to the camera for a second to show my ass. Okay. Lesh doesn't know. You can't see me right now. Okay. Lesh doesn't know that if we actually end up meeting each other in the place that we've talked about we might be meeting up in, the first thing I'm gonna do is throw this 14-stone man into the Hudson River as a joke. Like that's going to be because it's important to create memories. Like it's important to have that.
But
listen,
I will happily let you throw me into the Hudson. But the simple fact of the matter is, I know that there's a fine to pick for that. So
I know you fine. You're not supposed to hear that.
You're picking up the tab. All right. If that happens, you're picking up the tab for it.
True. Okay.
Here's the thing. One of the things that I love about your content, one of the things I love about you, generically as a human being, is you are, and it's you know, mentioned in the fact that you call yourself the unapologetic Zemen. You are just unapologetically yourself. You generally don't, you have this sort of philosophy of life where it's like, I don't care. If you like me, you like me. If you don't, you don't. Right. And I guess I kind of wanted to dive into that a little bit, because of all the people I know, you know, you have stood by that throughout the entire time I've known you. And I know that people do struggle with this idea of, you know, being themselves and being accepted. And, you know, because no matter how much we validate ourselves, no matter how much we sort of learn to love ourselves and care about ourselves, there is always going to be that element that we do want other people in our life. So I guess my question to you is, like, when did that start for you? When did that, was there a particular moment in your life where you kind of said, you know what, I'm done. I'm now just going to do me, and I'm now just going to be myself, and I'm not going to really care about, you know, who likes me and who doesn't.
100%. I think it gets tied in to something else that I've been vocal about, which kind of goes to what I kind of went through with mental health. I feel I've gotten to the point where initially they were separate ideas. Now I think they're kind of intersectional. So let me try to unpack this, because it's something I do. And I feel very unabashed talking about this. Goddamn Prozac. I'm kidding. Well, maybe. We'll explain in a second. So to just a couple of things, in terms of learning to be more myself. Well, okay, I'll first start with, I guess, the handle. I made a New Year's resolution for 2020 that I was going to try to let go more and be more open about who I was, because in many ways it was this idea of, well, the only way people are going to like you you need to stop doing that and those kind of things, or not just that, it wouldn't just be people who would directly say it. It was the fact that I could do that, and then you just had people in your life whose response was just, and I think like to the this is gonna, I'm not trying to be wax philosophical, I promise, but I think from the creative aspect, somebody who has disdain or just dislike something, that's not the most censoring thing to me, because that's just your response. It's just like, you don't care for this. It's the person who is just sort of like, what are you doing? Those are the things that I feel like for the longest time just made me freeze up, like literally just kind of shrink. So you almost were like, oh no, I won't do this about it. He's like, well, I don't want to make them feel weird. I don't want to make them feel uncomfortable. I don't want to, do this kind of stuff. And don't get me wrong, I am a person who wants to be inclusive to other people, but I realize that like I'm doing that but not as something that's literally at the expense of myself. And so it's just literally hiding aspects. So it starts with me making New Year's resolution. I started the app February of that year, and I slowly try to get to the point where I just try out different things that I wanted to explore. Because again, I have a giant void, and nobody's watching this, so I can just and I feel more comfortable about it. And you said something in the past which kind of helped me verbalize what I've been feeling when you talked about like law of attraction. Mm-hmm. My idea was I'm gonna just send some videos and do this kind of stuff, and it's a little bit, part of me is like a little bit like I want to play the game, like not play the views game, but just kind of like play into the system a little bit and just kind of play around with it. So have fun. And what I didn't expect was, one, to find people who wanted to find community, and two, most importantly, to find people who just showed up to me, like literally just people who were just sort of like, oh my God, this guy's amazing, I need to follow him. Oh my God, this person's like, he was like, we need to friends. People sending me their number. I'm looking, and I come from a fluctuating, low self-esteem in the past. So I'm just kind of sitting there. I was like, what are you doing? I'm like looking at them.
You're kind of questioning the intent behind it, because
100%. I might have anxious attachment style. I took the quiz a couple of times. I may take the quiz a couple of times because I wanted to be actually short, but that really was the one that felt most like how I kind of feel. So it's like I recognize, understand, love, but it's like when somebody is like either validating your feelings or just without. And the thought that came to my head from that moment was, why do you want to be my friend? I haven't convinced you yet. And you kind of have to sit with this thought process where like, and I know I've talked to this with you, and you think process, it was just sort of like, and I had other friends who were just like, why do you question this so much? And I'm literally sitting there like, because in the past I have walked into one-way relationships with people where I've kind of had to convince them. I've literally had to, I realized that like I'm giving a lot more of myself than they are, which is one of the things from the app that was definitely new.
And I think when you've been through that a couple of times, it becomes very easy to then project that outwards, because you always then walk around with this sense of, well, what does this person want out of me? They're not coming to me because they just want to be my friend, or they just want to insert themselves into my life. They're doing it because there's a need, or there's a want. That's that, and I come up against this all the time in my own head. I sometimes question why people want to be around me, and I practiced a lot of self-love. I know my worth, and I know that I have a lot of good qualities that attract people into my life. But it doesn't take away from the fear and the questions popping up into your head when people actually do start showing up. You then start questioning it, and you're like, but why? Because you say that I've made a couple of nice videos and they've really resonated with you, and you now want to be my friend because you feel that we're connected on that level. But again, we've never had a conversation. I've never convinced you,
and even those interactions I've had to, and I had a few friends who are just sort of like, we feel that you might have slight people pleaser attitude, which, to be clear, is different. It's a different animal than like when I naturally try to engage or I want to be kind to people or that kind of stuff. Sure. Mine, I think, activates more in the fact of like, if for some reason I want to keep somebody I'll just be like, let's just keep our friendship, our dynamic right here, because we don't really know each other that well yet, or I need to kind of grow into it. Sometimes I either am too nervous, I'll just be like, yeah, I'll just friend each other, even though in my own instinct, I'm just kind of like, I don't feel bad vibes from you, but I want to get to know you a lot more better than to just invite everybody friggin' in, which sometimes becomes the implication that comes up. And that's the part where really, like, I do have introverts. I was like, I don't want everybody out of my house, like figuratively. And it's not automatically an assassination of your character. I just need to keep a little boundary in here and not bring everybody in because because part of me, I'm my star sign says I'm supposed to be intuitive, but in reality, sometimes I'm very socially unaware. And so like I have to like take time to do that, let them in. The other half is I definitely have a bad vibe, or I have someone that just makes me uncomfortable, and I'm too terrified to just kind of like let that relationship, which I know we'll address probably another aspect for a little bit later. Like I'm very, very nervous to kind of like let us move on from or transition out of a particular.
I think it's when people are overly, the thing that always gets me is when people are overly pushy, and
yes.
you know it's kind of like they're trying to wedge their way in. And I've always said that for me, everybody I'm connected with on the app now has been on an energetic level. Like I've always kind of I'm you know a people watcher. You know, when I've spoke about this again on the previous episode, when I've gone traveling, you know, I've sat in cafes and I've watched people and you know kind of observed from a distance, and I kind of, you know, in my own head try and figure out, you know, someone as much as possible before I get to talking to them, because I feel like if I try and sense, you know, who they are from that level, you know, their energy and the aura they give off, it gives me an indication as to whether or not I want to strike a conversation with them. It's the same thing through the app. You know, there are some people that, you know, you just instinctively know that they're not going to be your type of person or your type of people, because there's something there's almost like an intrinsic, there's a gut feeling that tells you that's like, no, this is not for me. And I think that when you start to hone in on that, when you start to, you know, identify, you know, what works for you and what doesn't in terms of connections and people, you become more attuned with yourself. And there is an element, you know, I think of self-preservation with all of us. We're all trying to be cautious of who we let into our own lives, because we don't want to get hurt, or we don't want to, you know, be disappointed by people. And sometimes that happens, and you know, we can't do anything about it. You know, people make bad judgment calls, you know, from time to time. And I think that ultimately, as long as we learn the lessons moving forward, we can then try and become more selective in terms of who we let in. Like you strike me as a sort of person, you know, correct me if I'm wrong, I have a very small tribe. Like everyone always says to me that I seem to, you know, be friends with a lot of people, but the reality is most people only know me on a surface level. The ones that I truly do let in know a lot more about me. They know the deeper levels and the layers to me, and that's not something that I'm prepared to reveal to a lot of individuals, because I feel that I would rather get to know people on the surface level and sort of, you know, see what transpires and see what happens, and then if I feel comfortable to go further and let people further into my own life.
I feel like it's a mixture of both to me, and a lot of times I try to kind of clarify it. When I think sometimes I'm seen as this like lightning bug, like I don't know what the equivalent is in the UK. We would call them like fireflies, but you know, in the summer, you know, like the little you know, the little ones, like their thoraxes light up and that kind of fly around. Okay, I don't know if that you have that. Okay.
Yeah, we do.
But or I just have this thing where, like, I have so many adjectives where someone's like, his smile, he's beaming, I love it, and while I am being open about me, because I'm trying to show myself inside out. Like I'm trying to show like I want to enjoy myself. I want to have fun. And like I said before, I'm trying to let go of the censorships or things that I like to just let myself be me. The tricky part is I think I run into a situation where I become someone's I'm trying to say it with a straight face, but I become, at least through the app, I become someone's shining beam. I have someone's beacon. I have someone's like, giant light. And there's the part where I was just sort of like, I try to tell someone sadly, you are seeing a surface level thing. I'm not putting on a face for somebody because that really is like an aspect of myself. But the part that is difficult is there's other pieces. And so if the only thing someone characterizes, the only thing someone sees, I'm like, I have not let you into the other aspects of myself. I have not let you into the other things that I'm passionate about or concern me, or the fact that like if I'm cross with you, I go from like smiley beaming very different really quickly, and I promise I'm not bipolar, but it just nothing wrong with that obviously either.
Yeah.
But it was just this very much thing where just sort of like, look, I'm like I'm capable of other emotions, I'm capable of other situations and stuff, and really if someone knows me on a deeper level, then they kind of know aspects, and still now I take my time in getting to let people know about that.
And I think, when, especially when you're creating content, especially when you're sort of amassing, followers, a lot of people will get drawn into the content thinking that you are happy and smiling and everything all the time. And they'll follow you off the back of that because, your content makes them smile, and they kind of, and I've had comments like this, in lives, and I've had them on my videos, how do you stay so optimistic all the time? How are you always so positive? How are you always smiling?
I'm not.
And I'm like, whoa, backtrack. I said, you clearly are misreading my page. And I think one of the things I've tried to do,
I may inadvertently be presenting a certain way that people, or maybe they are reading, but I realize like, oh, like, this is my time to be positive. So I make a whole page that's super positive, and then people are like, he's never in a bad mood. I was just sort of like, no, I'm in like either a bad mood or the worst one. Like I will make you laugh, or I will be cross with you until you cry. Like there's
and like I said, I think one of the things I've tried to do, on my journey through the app is try to showcase more vulnerability, because there have been times where I haven't been 100% myself, and I've communicated that through a TikTok video, whether it's, a small little talk that I've done, and I've kind of gone, look, just to make you guys aware, like, I'm a human being, I'm not an actor on a screen who's always, conveying just the best parts of myself.
You're also not organ grinder monkeys, just so that's very, very clear.
Yeah, I'm here to show you that life is a wave, that you are going to have ups as well as downs. But what's important is how you always bounce back. It's about making sure that you remind yourself every single day that, there'll be challenges and there'll be obstacles, but with the right mindset and the right support network around you and the right people supporting you, you can battle your way through it. And I think it's one of the things I'm grateful for most of all is having found genuine people, through the app, and just being able to sort of say, do you know what? I'm not having a great day today. And looking in my phone book and just being like, I'm going to give this person a call. I'm going to give this person a message because I need this right now. I need someone to talk to. And be it if that person is thousands of miles away or just down the road, whoever it is, I know that I've got that support network. And it's a great way, people talk about, obviously, making connections and all the rest of it, but it is a social media app.
Yes.
It's not just there for us to have fun and to do all that kind of stuff. We are building connections.
And absolutely, and I've literally had to have a handful of moments where like I'm sitting here in like trying to hold back tears on the phone with somebody where I'm just sort of like well, first of all, there are moments where like I'm just like, so I'm really struggling with something I need to vent out to friends. Then I have moments when like the people pleaser would come up and I'm just sitting on the phone and just sort of like, this person hates me, I'm a piece of trash, like they're kind of like, you literally are not what, and that's what I mean. Like I have to be close to somebody in order to, or feel like I have a sense of being able to connect with them. And then even in those moments, I have to be careful because I want to make sure that I have a relationship that extends to that person outside of being their emotional dumping ground, because it's also the thing that I'm terrified about. So I'm like trying to I'm trying to make sure I have a genuine connection with this person too. And like make sure, especially if I've gone to them in the past for that, I'm just sort of like, that's not great for them. If I got to a point with one friend where I was like, oh, I've only majorly contacted her because I needed support because I was upset about something. That's not cool. Like I know I like this person. I know I want this person around. I just and so I make a priority at very least being like, be more genuine about like, call someone when you want to call someone, like contact them, or like keep them, like, you know, form bonds with this person.
And that's good. That's good that you have that level of self-awareness, because it means that
I had the self-awareness after the incident, just to be clear. So it was like, I still unfortunately was this person's emotional dumping ground first, before they said something, and then I looked back and I was like, oh, that was really shitty of me. Like,
but again, that's a learning curve. You know, I find a lot of the people that I speak to, you know, we pull each other up. You know, I've always said that one of the things that I've hated most of all, that when I was in my 20s, was having friendships which were based around yes people. You know, people continuously telling me how well I'm doing, or how amazing I am, or, you know, or you're just agreeing with me on everything.
And just everything's fine.
And I'm just sat there and I'm like, but I'm not. I want people who are going to challenge me. I want people to tell me when I'm not, you know, supporting them enough, or when, you know, they feel like, you know, I could be doing more, or, you know, I want people who are going to challenge me and help me grow. I don't want people who are just going to surround me and say yes all the time. You know, part of the nature of any healthy relationship, you know, friendship, romantic relationship, whatever, relies on an ability to be brutally honest with each other, you know. And then when you are honest with
at the very least, I think that having someone in your life that serves that purpose is paramount. I say that because, and again, it's like, I think I went to the therapy talk a couple of times. Someone gave me a quote once that said, different friends serve different purposes.
Absolutely.
And so you also have to kind of recognize, like, this person might be a great connection for you, but they may not be able to fulfill that aspect of you. If they are able to fit, and then that becomes a reflection. Do you need everyone to fill this aspect for you? Do you, depending if you already have someone like that? And if you don't, recognize, like, okay, I can't go there with this person, not because they don't care, but because they may not be equipped to handle that situation. This person's a bit better for it, but I like this person because they still help me with X, Y, and Z. That is the reason why I want to continue to have them in their life. But you have to kind of balance this where, like, I have to recognize that other people are different too. And so, like, I can't turn everyone to friend either. Some people really cannot take the brutal tough love. Like they love you, and then literally just are like, I don't, like they freak out because their own, especially because their own journey and what they're going through right now, they're not equipped to get that. So you have to find a way to address it. There is a thing I wanted to segue into when we mentioned about yes people, because that's a little bit involved in something I told you I wanted to talk about, which was I've had a mental health story in the past, or I don't know the right word for this, whatever.
Mental health journey, sort of.
Yeah, I still hate the word, but like it is in reality. So I'm pretty sure, like, I don't know if we'd already talked about this. Prior to this, I just put out a video. This was already on a TikTok because of, it was literally what I rated was the second worst day of my life up to this point. I put in a video. I sent it to Lesh. So he already knows generally the story. I was diagnosed with major depression disorder in 2013. This came after an episode when I was in the middle of grad school. And I started, and it wasn't just kind of like the blues or anything else. It started from burnout because I was in a schedule where I was, you know, exams every week, and like I would try to be staying up, but I was trying to study, and I feel like things were sticking, and I was having a really rough month. And then I got to a point where, because most people are just sort of like, oh, you know, when I've vented to it, and I don't have this on them, let me be very, very clear, because they are literally in the same hole that I was in. We're all trying to stay above water. So, you know, you just heard people like, no, you're fine. Like, no, I'm sure it's fine. And I think, like, no, you're just in a tough time. Like, you just write it off or shrug it off, that kind of thing. But I know that was like generally like really, really down. And I knew the part was related just to burnout, and like I was just under a lot of pressure, and I was just feeling really shitty about myself. And then I got to a point where I was like, well, this is different, because I got to a point where I wasn't sleeping, like even when I wanted to. So I would lay back, my eyes would go bloodshot up, and my heart is like pounding
Pounding it like
straight out my chest,
yeah.
like cartoon cat style. It just kind of, but I'm not in love. Like I'm terrified. But that kind of like panic was going every night for several weeks.
Anyone who's been through this knows just how difficult it is, you know, especially when you suffer with anxiety and stuff, you know.
Yeah, and the thing is, I had milder forms of depression before. Like I said, I had, most of my life I was low self-esteem, and like I questioned people who like me, and anxiety, that kind of stuff. And so, but now I'm at the point where like I can't sleep. I literally can't sleep. I want to, I can't, which is it's stressing me out further. Now I'm exhausted. Now I can't do it, and now I'm freaking out. Then I'm like, you're shit, you're garbage, or your intrusive thoughts are bothering you all the time. And so at some I went in, I was like trying to make sure no one can kind of see me, and I'm being pulled down further and further in. I was trying to go to hang out with people after exams and that kind of stuff. And like I went in, and someone came up, a teacher came up to me, mm-hmm. and it said like, how is everything going? I just burst into tears. Like I was just kind of, because I'm still holding all of this in, and I think, and I'm under all this, and I'm sitting with all this pressure and stress, and I'm like, I'm trying to get by, and I can't, and I'm like terrified of everything that's going on. I'm also just kind of under this convinced thought that like, if I have this one bad semester, I'm going to fail, which will throw me out of the program, which will put a mark permanently on me, which means that I won't be able to pursue anything else. Basically, I have this giant expectation that my entire life will be derailed.
Yeah.
Right. Like that entire life will be derailed of this stuff. And I realize I'm getting to a point where like I'm, like I said, like I'm sleeping, I'm exhausted. I'm bringing myself down further and further and further. Mm-hmm. And it starts out from the stress, and then it just kind of continues to develop. And then I get to a point where I was like, I can't. I was like, I don't want my life derailed. I don't want to live a life where everything that I've been looking for was derailed. And I start thinking that I don't want to be around anymore. And like literally sitting atop of a stair ledge, like while like sitting in traffic, or standing in traffic, or sitting inside a stair ledge, or like, and just kind of like, if I take care of this, I don't have to take the test. I don't have to bother somebody else. I won't be someone else's burden, and I will just be free. And every assertion in the world, who, they're like, well, this person will care about you, and that kind of stuff. None of that is going through my head. Not only is none of that going through my head right now, this part that does nothing. Where I am, it does nothing. Wow. And I say this it's been 8 years, and I'm at a point where I don't want to be around. And I finally, like, and I'd already been like trying to see a therapist and trying to walk back, because I'm sitting in this. Because while I'm freaking out about all this stuff, everything else is going on. Because as we kind of said before, life still goes on. Even when you're freaking out and everything, the clock is still spinning and crap's going on. And you're not, it just kind of, I was like, I don't know. I was like, I don't have time. The clock's right. It's like the nightmare where like people say like you're supposed to take the exam, but you haven't studied for the test. Yeah. Or that kind of stuff. Like it's that magnified. This is literally like everything will be over. Like in my head, everything will be over out of this one thing. And then to add on top of that, then because I'm an expert at shitting on myself, I look over. What you have to understand is my program, people can come into it like with college degrees, and people can come to it with just prerequisite stuff. I only say this because the group of people I'm studying with it's not just a bunch of 23-year-olds. It's like me, it's like moms in their 50s, it's people who are engaged in marriage. So there's a lot of people with a lot of really complex life situations going on. And so when I know that there are other people with a less privileged situation than I had at 23, 24 years old, getting supported by my parents, and like you're not cutting out, and you're not, cutting out, you're not sticking it out. Now I'm at a point where I was like, oh, you are, can you see me? You're seeing me?
Yeah.
Okay, I didn't know if I glitched. Now you're kind of at the point where like, oh, you are trash. You are, or like, you are very much like,
You feel
you can't
bad for
even
kind of
handle that.
complaining.
You
Yeah.
can't even handle this. You have no children. You don't have another situation. You can't just handle this thing. This is the only thing you have to in yourself. You are garbage. You're a piece of shit. You like just sort of like just drop it off. And I am fortunate enough, and I get someone, and I knew from jump that I wanted to get help, and we got to a point where I was like, this is about more than just talking to somebody. So I went and I got help, and I'm free. And even when the process, I'm still kind of like taking a while. I go, I do what I need to do. It takes a while. I go through a process for that, and so then I come back, and then I come back to my program. And fortunate enough, I worked with them, and somebody was vocal with me to set up a way. They're like, okay, this is how we're going to try to get you back in. Obviously, you had a lot on your plate before, so we're going to adapt and find a way to do it. And I finished, and the program is the one that got me my doctorate today. So, and
I mean, to be fair, is that this is another thing you've battled. Obviously, just listening to this, obviously in detail, you've battled a lot, but you've come out the other side. And again, this is another reason why I have a lot of respect for you, as not just as a creator, but as a person, because you have battled your way through a lot of kind of these negative, what I would call episodes, moments in your life, and you've turned
I still do sometimes.
Yeah, but I think we all do. I think we all have a choice whether to take these negative experiences and to either let them consume us and define us, or take the opportunity to say, do you know what, this happened to me, but I'm stronger than this. I can come back from this. And anybody who finds it within themselves to find that strength and love and compassion, for themselves is in my mind, very strong-willed and very, inspirational individual. And
can I say that was a part that took a minute to realize. First, I go and I get help, and every single person in Name Mama is telling me like, oh, so when are you going to go back to the program? And you have to realize in context, like I just left
yeah.
And like, I'm like, it's not even, and that's the thing, like I love the program. I love what I was doing. That's why I went back. Cause like, I knew that's what I wanted to do. I just had a program where I was just sort of like, I felt shitty about myself. Like I was literally just like, I'm not good enough. I can't do this. I can't do stuff. I can't function. I can't basically function. And so when someone's telling me like, oh, when are you going to go back? And I was like, no. If I go back, like, it'll all happen again. I'm going to screw up again. I'm going to do this. But again, like you're working mental health services. They're not paranoid and still dealing with depressive episodes. Like they have a better context. We're like, you're going to get through this, or you can go back to what you want to do, that kind of stuff. Okay. So that perspective was first harder to me to swallow while I was getting treatment. When I came back from treatment, then I was terrified about showing back up because I was just sort of like, everyone's going to judge me. Everybody's going to like look at me. Everyone's going to look at me funny. Everyone's going to look at me like I'm shit or failure, that kind of stuff. Again, guys, I'm 24 years old. So anybody who understands this part, like I'm in a very different aspect of life. And what first happened before I ended up going back was I had, and I guess this also means that even when I was depressed, I'm still me. I had somebody send me like a care package because they found out I left school, and then like all these people from my class like literally sent me like care package. I had 80 people on a card sign me like, we miss you, please come back, like we got you, do what you gotta do. And I said that, I don't know if I still have it. I cried, of course, and at that time, that was when I was still getting help. When I came back, I still think that people are going to be a bit funny about this. And like, when I say bombarded with love, like, I was just gonna, like people sneak attacked me, people like hugged me from behind, like people ran at me from across the room. I was like, because they all looked at me. I was like, oh, like, because they all, it was like, oh my god, he's I was like, hi. Again, the same thing with TikTok. Like when people just suddenly show me love, I freak out. But like, it was like, oh, hi. Just kind of go.
I think
stuff.
It's interesting that you mentioned obviously being bombarded by love, because I know one of the topics that you wanted to discuss as well, and we'll move on to this next, is the idea of love in all its forms. And sort of if we sort of like focus on that, you know, a little bit, this is I think something that has really resonated with me, you know, and I know it resonates with you as well, because, you know, having that, again, we talk about this idea of being, you know, being connected, you know, through social media, but you don't always have to have a physical presence, you know, with somebody in order to be able to show them that you care about them, you know, and to show them that you're there for them, and to show them that you're going to support them and stand through their, you know, the difficult moments. And by the sounds of it, that's what happened with you know, with people signing, obviously, you know, the cast and everything like that. And it's, I think a lot of the time we forget, and again, I'm going to get corny here, and I'm going to be completely unapologetic about it because it's who I am. I wear my heart on my sleeve. But I do believe that, you know, there is an element of, you know, love being able to conquer, you know, pretty much anything. I think at the end of the day, we're all looking for it. We're all looking for that sense of wanting, you know, to know that there's people in our corner, that there's people who are going to stand by us, and that if we have, you know, bad moments in our lives, we have somewhere to turn to. Not all of us, let's be honest, not all of us are blessed with, you know, an ideal family. You know, some of us come from families where we have issues. We've never received that love, maybe from our parents, or we didn't receive that love in, you know, relationships, or whatever the case may be. But and it's this idea of, you know, strangers turning into people who you then can't imagine your life without them. You know, if something suddenly happened to them tomorrow, you'd be broken inside, because they've left an impact on you. And sometimes the smallest gestures can be the most significant. You know, sending someone a kind message, leaving a nice comment, you know.
And it was something that I had family around the time. My family was literally part of the support system that allowed me to get help when I needed it.
Yeah.
But the idea that like I had people who you don't really know where you stand. And you have a sense of community because you have, and again, like this, like we're all classmates and students. Like there's a part where you're close, but there's also a part where you're like, this is a appropriate distance. And so when you had people, like they weren't required to, no one was required to send that. They could all be considered patron saints. They never had to send that. And the only last thing I wanted to touch on that, but recognizing we're kind of, I'm trying to find a way to tie it in also to what we're speaking about love.
Yeah.
I had a friend. This was maybe I knew when I come back and I'm again my situation dealt with school. I make a new study partner and we're hanging out, and I slowly made the choice to be more vocal about it. I decided in the beginning I was going to say at least some of the stuff, and then slowly I decided to be more open and honest with what was going on, especially since so much was dealing with stress and burnout. Those are the people that I felt comfortable saying in front of. Prior to that point, I had always treated it as like, well, I got over this, or I dealt with my situation. You know what I mean? And I kind of just evaded it. And so one friend, Courtney, sat down. It was the first time this had really clicked that someone had told this to me. She had said, it was like, I can't imagine how much strength it took for you to walk through that and be on the other side. And I say that because even while getting help, I never saw this moment as strong. I never saw this moment as like my achievement, or again, not achievement, but like I never saw this. I saw this moment as like the worrisome panic disaster that I had, and there was like, and that I just kind of like evaded, or I just kind of like crawled away to go deal with it. And they're like, no, you had a problem, you need to get it dealt with, but like this is your integrity. That's not the like. She reframed my mind basically, where it was like, oh, this is something I can be unabashed about, because this is something I've been more unabashed about because you came out and are stronger for it. Now, that being said, part of the reason why I also tie it into was I walked through that side of the situation. Now just sort of like a lot of things don't hit the same way. Some things still suck, don't get me wrong, but like a lot of things I realized I was much more capable of handling a lot of disasters in life because I felt like I suffered through one of the worst things in my life, and we found a way to get through it.
I think, yeah, and you know, again, having those people in those moments is so key. I remember I had a message of somebody off of TikTok a few months into knowing them, and they sent me a message, and I'll never forget it. And they said, "You've changed my life." Just those words. And at 31 years old, the only people that have ever really made me feel that, you know, I've had an impact on them are my immediate family, you know, my mother, my brother. And suddenly to have this person that was in my life that was kind of like, you know, we only know each other a few months and whatever, and to be like, "You've changed my life, you've changed the way I see things, the way I think about things." It wasn't about, for the first time in my life, it wasn't about what I brought to the table in terms of, you know, what I have. And that's something that I went through a lot in a lot of my friendships. It was always about people, you know, getting what they could out of me and then leaving. And that's something that
And
I
it's
felt,
always subtle because like the way I feel like the way
yeah,
people describe this, it's not literally a group of people who are just sort of like, hey, can I have 5 pounds? And then just like head out. No, it's like it's like you have some level of interaction with them and you have some engagement with them. But and again, I'm postulating.
yeah,
You have some engagement with them. Like it presents initially as a friendship, but like you're not, but you realize I'm like, I don't share that much with this person. We only seem to be game when maybe like we're hanging out or like we're going somewhere. That kind
yeah,
of,
exactly.
however it presents. Yeah.
And you know, to have somebody tell you that you've changed I cannot stress enough how much of an impact that left on me, because having someone tell you that you've changed their life by being present in it is them zoning in on who you are as a human being. And it's not just who you are, but it's how you make them feel and what you
Which I'll be honest, like my attitude, I've had that once, and my initial response was I was terrified. Because again, like when someone when someone is just sort of like, I love for what you've done for me, I freak the fuck out. Like I'm just kind of like, what
because it
like,
gives you,
I'm wearing
because what
what
it does, and again, it shouldn't be dependent on it, but what it does reaffirm to yourself that you have value. And again, it has to be a very fine line between, you know, being reliant on other people telling you have value and finding the value in yourself. But it's nice, let's be honest, it is nice to hear it every so often from other people. To know, to have someone vocalize and show you the appreciation and the gratitude, it's like, you know, it gives you that sense of accomplishment that you are a good person and that you're on the right path, that you're living your life the correct way because somebody has seen the impact that you've made and that you've helped them through something. And I think we're all after that. We're all after this idea of wanting to be important to people, wanting to make a difference, wanting to have an impact. Like I know with my motivational and my mental health content, the reason I do it is because I like the idea that somebody can out there who I've never met has maybe watched one of my videos, and even if it's just for 5 minutes, they felt better about themselves, about who they are, you know. Absolutely. And whether they are hundreds, thousands of miles away, wherever they are, whether my video turns up in a country that I've never even been to and, you know, touches somebody that I'll never talk to, if the only interaction I have with that person is a pre-recorded video that I've made, pre-recorded TikTok that's shown up on their For You page, it's shown up on their screen, as long as that has made them feel good about themselves and it's impacted them in some way, job done, mission accomplished.
And what's crazy about that is, like I said before, like we've brought up like, you know, certain messages or certain videos that kind of come up. A lot of times I don't remember the specific individual that will come over, and that's the thing that's also relevant to us too. Like some people may not recognize our names when they see the ones that like touch them. They may not recognize our names, but the memory of the video, whatever, either the feeling that they had from watching it or the message of that video is what sticks. Like the face and the name will go away, but like what sticks with them is going to be either made them laugh that day, made them feel happy, or it's going to be a message they needed to hear.
Yeah.
And so that's going to affect.
Yeah. we've got one more topic that I wanted to cover with you, and we're going to finish. We're going to finish on a slightly more funny note. And I know this is something. I know this is something that you and me both share. Share a common interest in as well. So obviously, we've recently had the Friends reunion. For those who who saw the cast of Friends recently got back together for the first time in, I believe, 20 years.
People are gonna say there's like, where are we going with that? But no,
it was. I mean, let's first of all talk about this reunion. So this reunion was obviously, something that a lot of people have been clamoring for, for a very long time. And for those who are fans of the show, if you grew up in the sort of late 80s, early 90s, and you followed obviously the TV show from start to finish, you'll understand the nostalgia, and you'll understand how a lot of us probably lived vicariously through those 6 characters. And I'm sure on some level, we can all resonate with one or maybe a number of those different characters at various points in our own lives. At some point, we've all been a Joey.
It's Matthew Perry's fault. There's a piece of me, it's 100% Matthew Perry's fault. Like I've just said before, I need to send him a letter. Like, my parents are going to sue you, like, for the way that I am. Like, it's at least 30% your fault.
Yeah, but I do feel that TV show in particular, for me growing up, it defined my teenage years. It allowed me to see myself through the eyes of some of those characters. I've been a Ross, I've been a Chandler, I've been a Joey, at various points in my life.
And what's crazy for me was I had caught the show very young. So I'm the youngest of like youngest of 6. I have 5 other siblings who are older. Obviously, the show was marketed a lot more to people who were a little bit older than us because they're depicting people in their 20s, and so things are going on. But because I caught on the show like literally when it was on the air, like literally originally in the 90s, I imprinted on it in a very different way because it's like I'm imprinting on these grown people but it's its own like natural style comedy and like the other things that are going on. And it also exposed me to a lot of things that it naturally exposed me to the kind of things going on. The easiest of which now it's not even considered a thing, but at that time it was a little bit more, was like I learned about the Alphabet Mafia through Carol and Susan. Like, because you have to realize the way that presented, it was just like, oh, he got divorced, and then she came out the closet, and then she went and married somebody else. And there's a part that's meant to be funny because it's meant to be funny. It was only presented to be funny just because it was unexpected. Yeah. But it was never pejorative. It was never rude. And that's how it should be presented. That's how people should first learn about it. Because it was just sort of like, oh, what's that? And they just like, oh, she fell in love with somebody else. I was like, oh, cool, okay. Like, just kind of go. I learned about that through Carol and Susan. I was learning about like basic relationship dynamics. I learned about artificial insemination, and I hadn't even had the birds and the bees conversation yet. Because if you realize how that show went, first of all, how the show went, basically Phoebe's having somebody else's child, and they just said they're just going to inject her through her tummy. So I was like, all right, cool. Like that's
that's perfectly normal. Yeah,
that's perfect. Because it's not, because all this stuff is like not connecting. I say this because I was able to just kind of enjoy and have fun and have comedy with it, and because it was this kind of open thing, it was all these, and I think writers at the time knew that they're able to write in a way that, I'll be honest, they're also writing this way because they have certain censorship that they have to be careful of, but they're able to write in a way that like some things are going to hit the adults and some things are going to be relatable to, or some things are going to be relatable to the kids. Now that, yeah.
What I was going to say was when you think about it as well, when we watched the show, obviously, in our teen years, it resonated differently. What's terrifying is that now, in today's day and age, we are, us and the people that we know on TikTok and our friendship group, whatever, we are around the same age as those characters.
Yeah,
some of those
literally.
Characters. So we are now kind of living the lives of some of those characters in real time. Because I think when the show first started, I remember sort of going back a while ago and sort of typing into Google. I said, how old are the characters supposed to be in season 1? And I think they
Gonna
vary.
be 26.
Yeah,
And
anywhere
Monica
from
says she's
sort of
26.
24 to 27. They're all different ages.
Yeah,
And
that's
I'm kind
true.
of like, I'm 31 now. So a lot of, when I watch the episodes now and I see some of the stuff that the characters go through season by season, I'm like, oh my lord, this is me. I'm there. Oh my god. Like, you know, try not to do it in the Janice voice, obviously, but
Right.
oh
my god.
But it kind
For the
of,
record, I want this to be in the clip for the teaser. So let's just out of context, people just see me like, oh my god. Like, what is Zemen's episode about?
but I think that a lot of us, part of the reason we resonate with those characters so much, like I said, is because we have either been through the stuff that they have been through, or we're currently going through it. And it's so relatable, and it's so, and I know one of the things that you wanted to talk about is this kind of this re-emergence of this addiction, because I had this conversation with a friend of mine a while ago, and I said, when is this show going to die out? Like, how long a shelf life do we
say that syndication for so long? Now, I do have to kind of warn you. Part of so, and here's the thing: I understand that people value and treasure things like this. It's nostalgic, and sometimes because that comes up, people will try to treat this in a precious manner. And I don't know if I'm like, okay, like I was gonna figuratively hold Lush's hand for a second. It's just like, I'm not trying, I promise you, I'm not trying to ruin this because this is relevant. But part of what came up to me with the Re-Emergence was realizing that while I still loved the show, there were also moments that I looked back and I was like, oh, we need to kind of address certain things. Whether what we look at it, what should have been yesterday's lens and also kind of today's. And so I was like, I promise I'm not ruining this. But I was like, I promise I'm not ruining this. But it was kind of the thing of like, you know, the way I saw these characters when I was little and everyone was amazing, or even as a teenager to now, is obviously a little different. And I think, and I'm in a phase and place in my life where I love things, but I should be able to love things and be gently accountable to them as well. So it's like, so I love this show. So it's kind of this thing where like, you know, Joey is like love and fun loving. It's like, yeah, but there's a certain way he needs to look at like how he interacts with women. We're not, and that was already kind of weird. But like, there was also this conversation where I saw somebody having, where they were like, we had to kind of have a re-examination to Ross a little bit because he was yeah, it was like he's a lovable character. We see him as the underdog. We want to believe in the love he kind of has, this kind of thing. But we also kind of look back at like how he responds to stuff, and it was like if you go like basically Ross, like you've done like videos, and I know you follow videos a lot, just like looking at relationship dynamics and how you handle insecurities, that kind of stuff. Yeah. It's like Ross needed therapy. Ross just needed to like sit down and kind of, because how certain interactions or things kind of came up. They I saw this film critique once that was explaining about the nice guy trope, and it was something that was going on, especially during the 90s and that stuff, right? So it was basically something where you had to be like, okay, these are probably well-intentioned people, and they might, or some people are well-intentioned people, but they've kind of programmed this idea of love in a very transactional kind of way, where they kind of take it as a quid pro quo. And you kind of look back at it, it was just sort of like, I love him, and I believe he really does love her, but then like how he responds to things, how we're kind of looking at it, you have to kind of be careful. And I promise you guys, I'm not trying to ruin the show for you. I promise I am not trying to ruin the show. But it's kind of this thing of like being able to reflect on myself now versus what I see then. The third one, and I'm going to be a little delicate about this. I'm going to be a little delicate about this, but I'm going to be really honest with you. I know Les has noticed. I'm sure everyone in noticed. I am an individual that I'm not going to introduce it like that. There was one of the running messages that kind of came up with the show was a slight call to question about diversity and whether it was intentional or that kind of stuff. And we only bring it up, and I've only ever kind of brought it up because I try to explain to some people, I was like, oh, I'm sure that's not like a big deal. And I was like, guys, I want to remind you that they were doing a show in New York City, in the Village, in the 90s. And I went to like a BuzzFeed article, and in 10 years and 200 episodes, they found a smattering of people who looked maybe a little bit different than the rest of the cast, and I only bring this cast, and I don't think it's intentional, and I don't necessarily think it's intentional. I think it was unfortunately a product of not the times, but like kind of like how people tried to understand, how people tried to write and understand for different types of characters. And I bring this up because I'm saying, and one of the reasons why I bring this up is because I think this is obvious before, like I look differently than other people. I tend to have different traits. Like me and Les do not look exactly the same, and there's like different traits. And part of that is because I'm a person of color. And this was something that was, as much as I love this show so much, this was something that was painfully aware. And it was, and I'll be honest, it was a little bit of a bummer. And you kind of wish, like, I wished you had a little bit more of that. Not change the character, not change the original cast, nothing like that, but you kind of wish they approached it better.
And I think that wasn't strictly limited to Friends, though. I think in the 90s, I think there was a lot
of things in the 90s.
I do feel it's got better nowadays, though.
Yes, 100%. But I think part of it also wrestles with the fact that, like, there is a more inclusive environment in the people who write for characters and people who sit in the back of writers' rooms, that kind of stuff, which I started seeing. Like, I'm a big fan of Mindy Kaling, for example, and she was very open about the fact, like, she was the single minority writer in a writer's room in 2005 because she was writing for The Office, which was started by she wrote for the U.S. version of The Office.
The Office, yeah.
With Greg Daniels and the whole team, and she was on, and that was the first time we kind of learned. I'm like, a lot of these characters and the way these storylines come up is based off of the writers who create them, which kind of makes sense. The writers are starting this, and I bring this up because I think during that time, we didn't see a whole lot of that. But I think part of the slight moral injury to it was that a lot of people didn't know how to write for characters. People know how to write for white characters very, very well. I've said this before with somebody else, like the way the landscape was kind of you could have, and again, I'm sorry, if you go back and you watch even like your favorite movies and stuff, you kind of realize you could write a white character that is a ladies' man. You could write a character that is confident, assertive. You can write someone who's dorky, and you can write someone who's quirky. You can write someone who's good at their job. You can write for a character who is kind of like a lone wolf. You can write someone who's aloof. You can write for, and the same thing with women. You can write this whole spectrum of people, and they only have to be representative of themselves and maybe their mama, or maybe their family. When we write for characters who look differently or from different communities and groups, because it's not just race, ethnicity, even other groups as well, sometimes people freeze and they get stuck in writing caricatures. You get right in these static characters who have this one quip or line, or who are who trying to jump in for entertainment.
That becomes dangerous because then you're sort of trying to fit a stereotype that doesn't really.
And it literally informs people's perceptions. Exactly. Like I had moments when and don't take too much into this. I had people who were just sort of like, must be a Carlton, because the reality is some people the only two black characters that somebody knows who didn't grow up in the hood or doesn't have like this exact, or doesn't speak a certain way, who doesn't move a certain way, who doesn't look a certain way. You have like a tiny group of people. They're kind of like, well, I guess they're just that then, despite the fact that they're all complex people. And so it becomes this thing where the reason why I kind of bring this up, and I think we're a little bit better at it now, but there's still more room to grow, was that we realized is that show was a commercial hit. And one of the things is when you have things that are given through art and media, it informs people's perceptions of the outside world. And it literally leads to how people kind of look at it. Like when you bring in diversity into creating people, it helps create a perception of the world that's closer to what we actually see when we walk outside.
Yeah,
to where we actually live in. And it makes people more included, it makes people be more comfortable, and it makes people recognize and realize people better.
And I think whatever we do, and then again, just to round off, I think a great way of rounding off this episode is just to sort of say, whatever we do, in any kind of art or media, form, whether, we're, and again, bringing this all back to where we first started, to talking about, obviously, what we do now, through, the context of TikTok or through the context of, other social media or whatever, as long as we're trying to be as diverse and inclusive of, people in general, I think that we are on the right track to trying to inform people in the correct way. And I do think that there is a lot more, diversity now, and people are becoming a lot more inclusive, you know, in terms of
consciously.
Yeah, consciously. That's
consciously.
the important thing.
Which is
it's
very easy for us to unconsciously exclude it. Like it's lit. Like it's the reason why sometimes you have to push a little bit, because it's kind of like the drifting boat. Like just kind of like you just kind of like let people off, and you realize like, oh
yeah. Absolutely, and I think, well, like I said, moving forward, whatever content we create, what messages we choose to put out there, as long as we're trying to be as inclusive, you know, and as you know, and as caring as possible of everyone who comes into our life, you know, and who we cross paths with, I think that we're well on the way to, you know, creating a better version of ourselves, but also a better version of the world that we live in. And I know that that's, you know, quite a deep sentiment to end on, but I do think it's important.
100%.
So listen, Zemen, this has been absolutely fantastic. I really enjoyed talking to you. Thank you very much for joining me. For those who aren't following Zemen, like I said, please go and check out his content. We didn't get to talk about the suspender dance, but I will leave that for people to go and check out themselves as part of your content, because
I appreciate that. I might do a story time about that. Yeah.
But like I said, thank you very much for joining me. This has been another episode of Inspire You. So until next time, guys, thank you very much for tuning in, for watching and for listening. All right, take care.
Take care. Bye, guys.